Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. This time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reasoning about us, I know you got me, it's so effortless. Back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. This time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
What is up, you guys? Welcome to the FPV News with JB and Itsblunty. How you doing tonight, Blunty?
Good, Joshua. How's it going?
Very good, man. Very good. I'm very glad to be here with you again on a Tuesday evening to talk about all the news in FPV. All the news? Do we have it all? Do we miss anything?
I think we got a bunch of it. That's for sure. Today
got a
is pretty
bunch.
jam-packed.
Oh, and thank you guys for being here as well. How many times are we going to mention DJI products in this live stream, Zipperlips FPV? I mean, the show notes are down below in the video description. All the stuff we're going to talk about, you can find the links that we're going to mention. There is at least one DJI story in there. Eventually, DJI, this will actually release, and we can finally stop talking about them, right?
Yeah, one day. And then they'll unrelease, and then they'll re-release again.
Who knows what they'll do. I'm just tired of leaks. Let me rephrase that. We're going to need to get DJI a set of adult underwear for all their leaks. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for being here as well in the chat. Carlos Roberto, boa noite, senhores. How's my Portuguese accent? Probably not. It's been a long time since I hung around Brazilians. Thank you guys. And thank you guys also in the Discord server for being here. Let's talk. Oh, is Fat Shark actually doing anything with their lives? That's newsworthy. Very interesting that you asked that, the RC dude. Because, Blunty, I believe a Fat Shark item is our first item up. But before we get into the items, let's just go through. What are we going to talk about in the stream today?
So today we're going to talk about a SharkByte firmware update. We'll talk about what that is and why you might be interested in it. We've got Skyzone Cobra X might be infringing on a patent of the Fat Shark Scout. So we'll talk about some sources we have on that.
Yeah.
The DVR Sim is upcoming, so we'll talk about that. I tried this new simulator. It's got VR.
An FPV simulator that you play in your VR goggles. That sounds either amazing or nauseating. I guess you're going to tell us which.
Yeah. We've got word that maybe RXSRs are shipping with access, even though you've ordered the ACCST version, so we'll talk about that. We've got a new ExpressLRS configurator, so now you don't have to do your own custom builds for firmware. So we'll talk about that and how you could learn more about how to use that.
Yeah. If you don't know what ExpressLRS is, you should listen up. It's the best thing you could possibly do with all your R9 hardware. Okay.
We have a couple community spotlights this week. We're going to talk about one for glow-in-the-dark props as an alternative to the LED light-up props. Maybe your batteries will never run out. And then we've got another community spotlight. We've got a 3D printed solution to use your Fat Shark diopters in your DJI FPV goggles.
What did you say?
Pretty cool. Use your Fat Shark diopters in your DJI FPV goggles.
Hold on, I have to go. I have to go start a 3D print.
UPS is hiring drone pilots. They've got a new program coming out. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
The FAA is hiring people to teach an aeronautical safety test that we've been expecting to come. So we'll talk a little more bit about that as well. The Drone Advisory Committee is coming up tomorrow. Just heads up on that.
Yeah. It's cool. They live stream the DAC meetings, the FAA meetings, where they take away all our freedoms and etc. And there's a lot of conjecture about what goes on during those meetings, like who is selling us out. And you can actually just watch the meeting live and find out what's really going on. And it doesn't always match the rumors. Anyway.
DJI V2 goggles are reportedly on hold from DJI for some manufacturer or for some distributors. We'll show a source on that, and we'll talk about that information.
They've been released, but then they were unreleased, but then they were released, but now they're on hold.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
It seems so. I mean, come on, keep up.
I can't. How are you guys liking your DJI V2 goggles that some of you have already?
Right. And as our final story, last but definitely not least, we've got a report that's finally surfaced from 2019 about the Alauda Airspeeder crash after that lost control outside Gatwick. We'll talk about why that crash happened and basically give you a checklist as a new pilot of things you might want to do on your build to avoid things that this build did not avoid.
Yeah, you guys are going to want to stick around for this one. I had not heard anything about this incident and when it happened, and now the official government investigation into it has come out. And the degree, I titled this live stream, I always name the live stream, instead of FPV news, I picked the juiciest story and I named the live stream to try and get people to click on it. And I named this live stream, Blunty, like this is the biggest RC related F up I've ever heard of. I don't remember the exact wording. I'm not exaggerating when I say that you guys will not believe the degree of screw up and consequences, and then the degree of incompetence of this story. So stick around for that. That's why we're putting it at the end, of course.
It's really unbelievable.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, let's start with a SharkByte firmware update. If you have, because we don't just talk about DJI on this live stream, we talk about SharkByte too. SharkByte has released a new firmware update or Fat Shark has released a firmware update for the SharkByte system, which adds some features. And Bloody, the feature that people are queuing on the most is the 1080p. And I think people are misinterpreting this feature.
Yeah. It seems like there's a couple of good things here for SharkByte pilots. The additional beta flight OSD support, HDMI scaling for goggles that don't natively do 4x3 properly, things like that. But yeah, I don't think the 1080p is going to be exactly what people are looking for.
Because people are thinking that it means that SharkByte is now going to do 1080p resolution. The SharkByte system has been 720p resolution. Nobody really knows what the native resolution of the actual camera sensor is, or maybe they do. I don't. But what they're doing here is there are some devices out there, like a display device or a DVR or something, that don't like the 720p image that the SharkByte ground station puts out. And when I first heard this, I was like, what doesn't accept a 720p signal? I don't know. Maybe it's got a bad built-in scaler or something. So the SharkByte ground station can now output a 1080p signal, but it's just upscaling the 720p to make the display device happy. It's not really running in 1080p.
Yep. Yeah, and yeah, like I was saying too, it does seem like the other big thing for some people on some of these goggles will be the HDMI scaling, the way that it's going to do the letterboxing for their goggles. Because I know there was some issue with 16:9 versus 4:3 on goggles like the HD02, whereas a goggle like the Skyzone 04X seems to fix that issue. So
yeah, because the HD02 goggles can't do 16:9 letterboxing natively. Like Skyzones, you just tell them, hey, letterbox it, and it squishes it and letterboxes it, and everything's fine. But since Fat Shark can't do that, I guess they're having the ground station do the letterboxing, which is, I guess it's okay, but not the best.
Sure.
All right. So if you have SharkByte, go ahead and get that firmware update done. You've definitely added a few features here. There's something that's not in here that definitely is worth mentioning, and that is the Fat Shark is also going to be adding MSP DisplayPort functionality, which will give full OSD functionality. I hear they're working on that. They haven't implemented it yet, but definitely something else to keep an eye out for in future updates.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be pretty interesting. Hopefully they'll get that implemented pretty quick, and then they can be, way ahead of DJI on that thing, because that's where this SharkByte really shines.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking of Fat Shark and SharkByte, from good news to meh news, what's going on with Fat Shark and patents in the Skyzone?
So this is pretty interesting. We actually we did some investigative work, and I was able to notice that there were some issues. Banggood actually listed that they were stopping selling the Skyzone Cobra X. Apparently it was a policy issue. It was labeled as a policy issue and was taken down. So I reached out to Fat Shark and Alan at Fat Shark, and he basically gave us a reply and said, we do have a patent on the optical architecture used in our Fat Shark Scout headset. If you take apart the Cobra, it uses an architecture that matches the one claimed in our patent. We informed Banggood that we believe the Cobra was in violation of intellectual property, and after review, they made the decision to stop selling the Cobra.
Yeah. So Fat Shark has I'm trying to put this email on screen. It doesn't quite fit, but the chat can see it. And by the way, this was Blunty reached out to Alan and said, this is a public comment, so we're not showing any private emails on stream or anything like that. But the Scout Optics has been advertised as patented since it came out. I don't know the nature of the patent. Maybe it has something to do with it's a downward-facing screen with a 45-degree reflective mirror. I know that the Fat Shark Transformer had a similar setup, and maybe that's the patented optics, but really I don't know. But if you look on Banggood, Skyzone Cobra X, if we try to look, we see that due to policy reasons, this product does not exist. Now, you're only going to see that warning if you're in the United States. Outside the United States, they're still selling it because presumably it's a United States patent, so it's not enforceable in other countries. But basically, Banggood at least will not sell the Cobra X or the Cobra S into the United States due to a claim from Fat Shark about a patent. Now, I asked Daniel at Skyzone if he had any comment, and he said that he didn't give a lot of details, but he said that basically they don't think they're infringing on the Fat Shark patent, and actually they have a different mechanism. I doubt we're ever going to see this fought in court, but if suddenly you're not able to buy Cobra goggles in the United States, that's why.
Yeah. I hope it's not the case. Skyzone's really been killing it, so I hope this is just a confusing thing, and it's not actually infringing, and this will all be worked out. But
yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, I don't expect to see Skyzone licensing the technology from Fat Shark, and If they truly are infringing a patent, then I absolutely agree that Fat Shark is right to enforce the patent. You know, it's relatively hard to get a patent, so once you have one, you have every right to defend it. I've often criticized other companies in the RC community for being overly aggressive with claims of cloning and stealing. And I've said, look, it's such a generic thing. You're saying that they're stealing. And if you really wanted to protect it, you should patent it. And you don't have a patent, so screw you. But Fat Shark has a patent, so.
Yep.
Anyway, there you go. If you want Cobras, go order them on U.S. retailers. Says, you know, I mean, if you can get, I mean, there's other stores in the U.S. that are still selling them. Perhaps they will stop selling them, but there you go. You'll have to. It'll be one of the few cases in the world where you have to reship something into the U.S.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. What's next, Blunty?
So next up, we've got a new simulator that's coming out, or that is, I guess, released here in a little bit. Anyway, early access, I think. Yeah, early access. It's up on itch.io and Steam, and it's called DVR Sim. Now, I don't know that the name is the best name in the world.
It's a little unfortunate. It has nothing to do with DVR.
Yeah, this is actually a drone virtual reality simulator. And so this is pretty much your run-of-the-mill simulator. Like the actual simulator part of it, you can play without a VR headset. But it seems pretty run-of-the-mill. There's a couple options in there. But the big thing seems to be the fact that it's built for your headsets. So I used my Oculus Rift S on this and tried it out. And so there's like a 2D flat mode that basically just puts the screen right in front of you like you're wearing a set of goggles, and it just acts totally normal. There's a 2D mode with head tracking, so when you look around, you can actually see like you're on a head tracking camera. And then there's actually a 3D mode that's entirely 3D. And so it's like you're in the quad and you can see all around you in full 3D.
Yeah. And when you first told me about this, you hadn't tried it yet. I was like, is it like just nauseating? Is it better than, how is it different or better than just putting FPV goggles on your face?
Yeah, it's quite a bit, it's quite a bit jarring. I guess it's like similar, like if you've ever just played a video game that you felt was pretty immersive, and then you've played the same thing or similar in VR, like suddenly you're in it now. So now you feel the movements and it feels like you're on a roller coaster and that sort of thing. But, you know, I have fairly decent VR legs and it wasn't that sickening to me. You know, I played it for a few minutes and it seemed fairly reasonable. It was pretty interesting. It was definitely something different. I don't know that it's the best thing to like learn FPV, but it was kind of fun.
I mean, normally when you fly FPV, you're not flying in 3D, literally not like Zoe FPV 3D. Like the stuff coming at you, the screens are not showing 3D. This would be like the only way, really feasible way for many people to actually get the experience of flying a quad in 3D, like with the environment coming at you.
Right.
Were the physics any good?
They were all right. It has like the thing I think a lot of simulators do where they don't really like model the motor torque. So you kind of get instant torque. And that's like the biggest thing that always like jars me on these simulators is like the gravity can be hit or miss. But the main thing is just like if you push the throttle up and you instantly move up without any kind of like delay or like spooling of the motor. Yeah. That's like the biggest thing for me. But it's like flyable. It's perfectly flyable.
Yeah, Fluoxethine in the chat says you can play every simulator on VR goggles. No, that's absolutely true, Fluoxethine, but it will just be projecting a flat screen onto your eyes as if you were looking at your computer monitor. The idea is this one is designed for VR goggles, so it's rendering a different scene in each eye, for example. Blunty, you said there's a mode where you can literally look around like you're doing head tracking and so on and so on. So this is something novel, and it's free. So if you have VR goggles and you want to give it a try,
there's a demo up on itch.io for free. So definitely give that a shot.
Okay, awesome. Check it out. It's not free on Steam. It's early access on Steam. Got it. All right, very cool. Now we're going to enter a segment of the news that is called "How is FreeSky making your life less convenient today?" And a while back we had talked about that XM Plus receivers have started shipping with 2.1 firmware on them, and that means that they will not bind to any radio with 1.9 firmware on it, which many radios do. Not the newest radios, but if you have an old QX7 or an X9D that you've had forever, suddenly it wouldn't bind to your XM Plus. And so then what do? You update the firmware on your radio to 2.1, and now you can bind to your brand new XM Plus, except now you can't bind to any of your other receivers because they're all on old firmware. Super inconvenient. Now that it seems that the RXSR is doing something similar. They're shipping the RXSR with access firmware. This is a link from GetFPV's website saying that they're coming pre-installed with it. And that means that you will not be able to bind to ACCST radios unless you flash to ACCST firmware, either version 2.1 or 1.9.
Yeah, this is even more annoying than the 2.1 thing, by like a large margin, I think, because the multi-protocol people came up with a solution in the FreeSky X2, so you can bind to ACCST 2.1 receivers if you've got like a TX16S or something, but you can't bind to access. Like, there's just no option for people who have a multi-protocol or an older FreeSky like non-access radio. It just seems like crazy for them to do this. I mean, I get where they're going with this. Like, I sort of understand the idea, but like, I just can't imagine why they're starting to alienate users like this.
It's tough because it's a case where it would have been better to just pull the Band-Aid off, if you will. Like, I really like that they released the Archer line of receivers. And my thinking was that the Archer line of receivers would come pre-flashed with access firmware, and then they would slowly phase out the older receivers like the RXSR, the XM Plus, the ACCST receivers. So now they've switched and they're shipping the RXSR with access on it, which if they had done that when they first released access, at least it kind of would have made sense. Or if they would deliver two SKUs, if there was an RXSR access and an RXSR ACCST and you could order the one you wanted, but they've just made this change. They haven't announced it. Well, GetFPV is announcing it for them, and it just makes it harder and harder for people who actually want to freaking just bind their damn receiver to do it.
Yeah, and it's always the other issue, like you said, they're not really announcing it, so you've got to like play a guessing game to see who got what shipment when, to know like what receiver you're going to get.
Exactly.
It just seems unnecessary. They had previously sold like an Access AC or an Access RXSR and an ACCST RXSR.
They did that.
Like,
I didn't remember that.
Yes, but now they're like combining them for some reason, or like pre-flashing everything with Access, or it just seems like extremely frustrating for users.
But they're not, because the XM Plus, I believe access firmware is available for the XM Plus.
It's like a beta, like a weird. There was like a firmware release, and I don't think they kept up with it, as far as I remember from XM Plus. So that's like I think they're kind of keeping that legacy ACCST. Okay.
Anyway, yeah, super annoying. At least the RXSR has an easy plug. It is super easy to flash an RXSR. Just boom, plug it in. It comes with a flashing cable. If you have a FreeSky radio, you just plug into the bottom of the radio, flash it. At least that's easy. With the XM Plus, you have to solder to it to reflash it, and that's super annoying. Most people in the chat are like, just shut up, go Crossfire, go Tracer, go Ghost. Certainly a compelling argument there. Also, you could go ExpressLRS, which segues us nicely into the next news item. Before we, what is ExpressLRS, Blunty, real quick? This is for people who don't know.
So ExpressLRS, so you've got your other receiver protocols. You've got R9, you've got Crossfire, now you've got Tracer, now you've got Ghost, okay? So these are all communication protocols from your transmitter to your receiver. And so now basically what somebody has done is said, hey, why don't we just make an open source one? And then we'll make a bunch of hardware we can flash it to, and we'll find a bunch of other hardware we can flash it to and stuff like that, build targets. So that's what they've done. So ExpressLRS said, hey, let's do it all open source. They've made open source TX, open source RX. They've made firmware for other devices like R9s and things. And now you can flash those things to those devices and use them as a long-range link or a short-range link or a fast update rate link or all of the above.
Yeah. Yeah, ExpressLRS, I haven't had a chance to test it yet. I've been talking to one of the developers, maybe the lead developer, just having some conversations about why it's so awesome. And he's super passionate about building a high-performance open source control link. And some of the things he's done to get maximum range and maximum performance are pretty impressive. But the really cool thing about ExpressLRS is that if you have any FreeSky R9 module, is it any module? Or is it only the newer ones?
I think it's like newer ones and then some of the older ones. I think they're like trying to get everything on the list, but I'm not sure that everything's available now. The cool thing now, we'll talk about this real quick, is just now we have the ExpressLRS configurator. So this configurator will allow you to load this up and literally get a list of all the targets. So you could pop this open real quick, do the drop down, and actually see if you're on the list for your device pretty easily. But basically, this allows you to flash any transmitter or receiver that's supported by them. And it basically takes one extra step than just flashing. So basically all you'll have to do is plug the module into your radio, or plug the receiver in the bottom of your radio or in the JR bay and do a flash on those to a bootloader of ExpressLRS. Then once you've done a single flash to them, from then on, they'll work on ExpressLRS with no issue. And now you can use the configurator to flash new or old versions, to change settings and do things like that.
Yeah, pretty slick. Making it easier and easier to try it out. If you have a bunch of R9 hardware and you're not too happy with FreeSky for whatever reason, flashing ExpressLRS is the single best thing you can do to breathe life back into it. It definitely has some hitches in terms of ease of use. It is still not completely plug and play and ready to go, but this is a hobby with a lot of enthusiasts in it, and it's pretty freaking cool. Dominic Clifton in the chat's pointing out you can also flash ExpressLRS to a Ghost module and Ghost receiver, I think. It works in both 900 megahertz and 2.4 gigahertz. So pretty slick.
It's really slick. I mean, they're just constantly making cool changes. One thing I wanted to point out, I thought was neat, I learned about today, they have this thing called binding phrases. So essentially, whenever you flash your TX or flash your RX, you just type in a word, any word. And if you type that into anything you flash, it just automatically is bound to itself. So you don't have to bind anything.
There's no binding. You just type your key phrase, your pass, like Wi-Fi. You just type your passphrase in when you flash it, and then it's immediately bound.
Yeah, and if you don't want to do that, you just unpower it. You power it and unpower it 3 times. It unbinds, or you just don't put in a binding phrase, and then you bind it like a Crossfire style, where when you power up the receiver, it's automatically ready to bind. You put bind on the radio and bind it like normal.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And I assume that also supports multi-bind, where if you want to put the same phrase in more than one module, so you can have them bound. It's like a cloud.
I believe that is the case. Yep. And the other cool thing about ExpressLRS is that if it's not here now, that Crossfire style binding happened like 17 days ago. So they're constantly making these updates and changes. And if you don't see it now, probably in a month it'll have it. So
yeah. And I love the there were people who said ExpressLRS, what's the point? We could just buy Crossfire. I love that open source projects like this exist for their own merits, 100%, because ExpressLRS is doing things that nobody else is doing in terms of performance and range. They totally are. But in addition, I love that they push, even if you love Crossfire and you would never leave it, the existence of Ghost and ExpressLRS is going to push TBS to do things that they wouldn't have done otherwise, because people will see cool things and go, oh, I want that. And that's just true. So it's great to have this competitive ecosystem. And it's great that ExpressLRS is getting easier and easier to take advantage of. So there are links to that down in the video description in the show notes. UAV Tech says full telemetry is coming. That's exciting. One of the ways that ExpressLRS has gotten performance in terms of low latency is they don't have bidirectional telemetry. Sounds like they're going to have that too, if you want it. Very slick.
Yeah, I think they also do like delayed telemetry, or like slower packets, or like once every 8, or things like that for telemetry as well. So. Yeah. They're anything you can think of that would be like a smart way to organize the data for data we need to make the quad perform properly. They can just do those things open source instead of having to get it through a whole thing and push a new firmware update through a company and things like that. So again, just super cool to see. I love the progress.
Yeah. Exciting. One of the coolest things about ExpressLRS, I'll tell you one of the coolest things I think is that one of their goals is to have the packets be as small as possible, because the smaller the packet, the faster you can send the packets, or the more range you can get. And I'm not exactly sure I could explain why smaller packets mean more range, but basically you have so much RF goodness, and you can slather that goodness in various ways. You can spend that RF goodness on bigger packets, more range, faster, lower latency. But there's only so much to spread around. And so, for example, Crossfire has very, very big packets. There's lots of information in a Crossfire data packet. It means that when you go to a high update rate, Crossfire, you're going to get less range. One of the things ExpressLRS has done is they encode the aux channels as like a bit mask, as opposed to treating, everybody treats aux channels as if they were like servo channels with a full 1000 to 2000 range. There's no reason to do that. They're essentially binary. And ExpressLRS just acknowledges that and it's like, fine. It's really slick. So,
Yeah,
okay.
super smart.
All right, so that's ExpressLRS configurator. Now it's time to go into Community Spotlight, where we focus on community projects, things people are doing out there that we think you ought to know about. And we got 2 of them this week, right, Blunty?
We do. We actually have two different things. The first one I'd like to talk about is glow-in-the-dark props. So everybody's been doing light-up props, talking about LED props and stuff like that. And basically, the thought was, well, instead of doing that and having to worry about batteries and like organizing the props and putting them in the thing and balance and all that kind of stuff, instead, why don't we just paint UV paint on them, glow-in-the-dark paint, and then put UV lights on the arms to charge them constantly while you fly?
That is, and I heard people suggesting that, and I thought, that can't work, right? Some people didn't suggest glow-in-the-dark props. They just wanted to have like a light on the arms. And the problem with that would be that the prop would only light up underneath the light. But this isn't just reflective. It's phosphorescent, right?
Right. Yeah. So you're constantly charging it while you fly.
I got to say, anything that lets you use standard props instead of complicated props with freaking batteries in them, certainly. I mean, the batteries alone could be $5 a set, $6 a set. This looks a lot more sort of palatable if you're going to be busting up your props. It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Do they have different colors, though? Is it only the one sort of glow-in-the-dark green color?
I think so, but I know they do make different phosphorescent paint colors. So this is probably the demo color, but I bet you could use any of the like glow-in-the-dark paints as long as they adhere to that plastic. Pretty cool idea.
Mail Radek in the chat says GemFan had glow-in-the-dark props back in 2015. Yeah, I think the sort of development here is having the UV LEDs on the arm to cause the props to light up really super bright.
Yep.
Pretty slick. Yeah, pretty slick. It says green, license drive says green is the brightest glow. Let me also just pause real quick here and get the super chat. Sliggett, thank you for a €5 super chat. We don't usually get a ton of super chats on the news because there's not as much interaction, but thank you for that super chat. Let's see here. 20 batteries for $6 on Amazon for the Moonlight props. Yeah, exactly. So those 20 batteries, you're going to use 8 batteries, so $3 basically for a set of batteries for the Moonlight props. They're going to last you about 15 minutes. And the big thing is like installing the props is a bit of a hassle. The Moonlight props certainly do look very, very nice though, and I do like having the other colors.
So from one community spotlight, let's look at another one, another cool thing people have done. Somebody has made a 3D printed solution to use your Fat Shark diopters with your DJI FPV goggles, so you don't have to order different diopters for your DJI.
Oh my God!
Now, and this is one of those things that's like, hey, why didn't anybody do this already? This was a no-brainer. But this is super cool that somebody did this.
I love this. I should show. Hang on. RHO Lens, DJI goggles. RHO Lens has a product called Solace. RHO Lens makes custom Fat Shark diopters. And this is their Solace. I feel like they deserve a shout out. And this is a custom made diopter that fits on your DJI goggles. Fine. But I have at least 2 sets of diopters that I'm not using, because the HDOs have built-in diopter adjustment. It's basically only the Orcas are the, whoops, wrong scene, sorry about that. Only the Orcas are the only goggles I currently have that don't have built-in diopter adjustment. So I have a couple sets of diopters that are just sitting there as spares. I'm so happy about the potential to just print out this little carrier and put them into my DJIs and not have to wear glasses under my DJIs. It's really slick.
Right. It's the Tador lens from RHO. I actually just ordered them.
It's not the Solace?
No, it's the Tador.
What's the solace?
Not sure.
Maybe that's for the goggles RE. Oh,
Yeah, maybe
you're
the old
right.
ones.
That's my mistake. Let me show that real quick. The Tador is for the DJI FPV goggles. The Solace is for the DJI goggles RE, or the goggles. Sorry, that's a little confusing. That's my mistake. So not the Solace, but the Tador. Thank you for the correction. Damn it. There we go. That's the one. Yes. So I'm
But yeah,
I'm
this
literally,
is super smart.
I'm literally going to print this like this evening. I'm totally going to do it. They're really amazing. 3D printing. Fantastic. Finally, a use for my 3D printer. Ugh. All right. So thank you very much to Pathfinder Zero for making that. As a guy who, I mean, I wear glasses under my DJI goggles, and it's usually fine, but yeah. People are saying they hear crickets. Yeah. So it was 70 degrees today. It's the first, felt like the first day of spring, and I had a great day outside flying, and I could not resist having my window open. So that's why you're hearing crickets. There's crickets and frogs out there. It's gonna freeze again before spring is really here, but for now there's crickets and frogs, and that's why I love living in Tennessee. So, how's the weather up there in Colorado? Plenty cold.
It's good. It's almost 70 here, which is crazy.
There you go.
So it's nice. I went flying yesterday and today.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone who lives in Texas or snowy places. Sorry. Not trying to rub it in. All right. Let's see. Next up. Do you want to help the commercial interests screw over hobby? No, that's a bad intro. Do you want to be a professional drone pilot? One way you could do that would be to get hired by UPS. UPS is apparently hiring drone pilots, and I saw up to $80,000 a year. Somebody said, "Is that? I don't know."
Yeah, I'm not sure. This article doesn't talk too much about that, but I'd imagine it's going to be quite a bit for a company like this. I don't know how many pilots they're going to hire. They haven't really talked too much about that. I think it'll also depend on how the remote ID stuff works out, how many pilots they can have to a drone, and all those sorts of things. But right now they are going through the final approvals with the FAA to be able to hire those pilots. So it'll be any time now. They'll be working their company called Flight Forward, UPS Flight Forward, into a program to do deliveries. Currently, they're doing deliveries for hospitals, and they're expanding that into a larger program.
Yeah, they're. I assume that you would not be like literally hands-on flying the drone. I assume the intent is that the drones will be fully autonomous, and this is just a transition period where you need to have a human hands at the wheel, if you will. Maybe you would manually deal with like the last stage of landing or something. I don't know. Maybe that's the most dangerous stage. That's the stage where you would most want to be automated. But I assume you're not going to be you're going to be like one guy sort of watching a bunch of drones, and you will be a pilot sort of in name only. But still, this could be good money.
Yeah.
Scowler Jace in the chat wants to know if ExpressLRS is a descendant of OpenLRS. I'm not sure that they're related. Sorry, Blunty, you were about to say.
Oh, I was just going to say, so if we move on to another job that they're looking to hire for, the FAA is now going to do their safety test. So we've talked about before that the recreational flyers have to pass a aeronautical safety and knowledge test. And so they're finally getting that finished. They're in the final phases, and they are going to hire, and are hiring now, test administrators for that test. So it won't be long before you'll have to take a aeronautical knowledge and safety test to be a recreational drone pilot.
Yeah. This is new because, of course, commercial 107 operators have had to take a test for a while, right? But recreational flyers could just register their drones and be good to go. I got to say, I know there's going to be a lot of criticism of this. There's going to be criticism from people who feel that any regulation or any testing is get your hands off my freedoms. And there's going to be people who look at the test and go, this test is stupid. And I know it's going to be stupid because so many of the things in the 107 test are stupid. There is not ever going to be a situation where I need to de-ice my freaking multi-rotor before I go fly it. FAA, that doesn't need to be in the 107 test. But at the same time, I feel like educating yutzes who got a drone for Christmas and just don't know anything about anything, I feel like in principle that's a good thing.
Yeah, maybe this will tie into our last story a little bit when we get there.
Yeah.
Because you think people would understand like a basic level of things, and I think that our last story proves that. So
yeah,
it's not the case.
All right. Well, before we get to our last story, we can't have a stream. You know what we haven't talked about at all?
So we got to talk about We got to talk about the Drone Advisory Committee that's happening tomorrow.
I skipped ahead one.
So I just want to let people know that there is a Drone Advisory Committee with the FAA tomorrow. And
my bad.
No problem.
Go ahead.
And so they'll be live streaming on their channel. A live Drone Advisory Committee. They have these every little while, and we have also a link to the meeting agenda with what they're going to be discussing, a whole bunch of stuff. But if you have any interest in being involved in the communication that people have with the FAA, like to see how that happens or what they're going to be communicating about, how the FAA is responding, then at noon Eastern time tomorrow, you'll be able to check that out.
Yeah, and like I said in the intro, I think it's extremely interesting. Not the meeting. The meetings are usually The meetings are usually pretty boring unless you're just like a total policy nerd. But I just think it's super interesting to see the sausage being made. And there are so many statements from people who have never watched one of these meetings about what they think goes on. DJI is selling us out. The AMA is not standing up for us. The Commercial Drone Alliance is doing this. You can just literally watch the whole meeting if you want to, and you can know what's going on. So,
absolutely. So now, what you were referring to, the thing we never talk about on the show.
Yes.
DJI.
I already wasted my joke though, so I'm not going to do it again. So it's DJI V2.
Yeah, we've got a report from somebody who works at Makerfire, who's a sales director at Makerfire, that said DJI has stopped shipping V2 goggles to vendors. So if they have like pre-orders in from customers and they're trying to make another shipment order direct from DJI, they're saying that DJI is currently not fulfilling those orders, and they've told vendors to put those on hold. So Makerfire is actually going as far as to like take refunds, like issue refunds for pre-orders for people. So to me, this does seem somewhat legitimate.
Yeah, and you say Jack Shea, if I'm saying his name right. You know this guy. You know he's a Makerfire rep, and so you believe that this is true. Who knows what the F is going on the back end with DJI? The release of the goggles, they leaked it. They released it. They said unrelease it. Then apparently they released it again, and now it's still officially released, but they're not going to actually let you sell it. Noisy Boys Garage thinks that March 1st will be an important date. We'll have to see about that. But I think all of this is I don't know, but I think all of this is going to resolve itself when the DJI FPV drone finally comes out, and then hopefully it'll all settle down.
Yeah, I think we're all ready for that to happen so we can get on from the leaks.
I wonder how much of it has to do with silicon shortages. You know, there have been difficulties, people getting silicon, getting chips manufactured all over the industry. Everyone's feeling it. Graphics cards, they can't make enough graphics cards for people. I've heard, Dominic Clifton, you're in the chat. Maybe you as a manufacturer of flight controllers can talk about difficulties getting like gyro chips and MCUs. I wonder if DJI is having difficulties getting chips, and they don't want to sell the goggles because they need the goggles for their drone kits. I don't know. I'm totally speculating.
Dominic Clifton points out it's not the silicon, it's the packages, but it does sound like there is an issue with that. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it definitely could be that for sure. I mean, they had some time off for CNY, so maybe there was some lull in the goggles there. I think a lot of people have said that maybe there's pack-ins for the DJI drone. Maybe they're just trying to get more kits of the drone put together. There's a lot of speculation like we've done for a long time. But as you said, hopefully a couple of weeks here we'll have a solution.
Yeah, I hope so. Ben T, thanks for a $10 super chat. Ben is printing his lens adapters as we speak, so thank you for that super chat.
Awesome.
Dominic Clifton says it's the packages, not the silicon. Yeah, I guess I say silicon, and I just mean, chips. But silicon wafers are actually a thing that there can be shortages of. I don't actually know what you mean when you say it's the packages. You mean the little case that goes around the chip? Anyway. Gamers Nexus had a news article about it. Okay. Didn't know that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I guess we should probably get on to the last story. Definitely not the least.
Yes.
It is going to be quite a mess to sort through. So buckle up.
Yeah.
Luckily, this drone pilot also buckled up. Yeah, it's going to be pretty crazy. So basically, in 2019, there was a DHL labeled Airspeeder that was built to be basically a manned FPV style drone, like FP or just a quad in general. So it had 4 motors and it held a person in the center. And this was something they had tested a few times. A crew from Australia, and they brought it to the UK for testing and to show off to some investors and things. Basically, that went awry. Essentially, what happened was there was oh man, it's so hard to know where to start here, but let's just summarize basically what happened. So they flew this thing by 200 people, 30 meters away, going extremely fast, back and forth, and about 60 seconds in the flight, they lost control.
Okay,
but
so they fail-safed, basically.
They fail-safed, yeah.
Yeah.
And you would think, fail-safe's great, but
what happens when you fail-safe, right?
The first thing we find out is
falls
that
out of the sky.
The failsafe was set to maintain the last throttle position. They had the failsafe set to maintain the last throttle position and then put the quad into level mode, or put the drone into level.
I think this is hilarious because people do this with their FPV drones, and I find it controversial even then. Depending on where you're flying, maybe it would be an acceptable risk to put the quad into auto level and hold throttle position and hope that it climbs out and Blunty's gone. I've lost Blunty. Where'd you go, Blunty? Maybe it would be acceptable to are you there? He's dropped out of the Discord call too. Well, he'll be back, I assume. Maybe it would be acceptable to do that with an FPV drone, but I just don't understand how you do that with a supposed to be manned. Thank God it wasn't manned at the time that this happened. Hang on, I should turn this stream overlay off or not. This is not the right stream overlay. Hang on. Where'd you go, Blunty? He's totally gone. Hold on one second. Let's see if we can get him back. One second, guys. Let's see if we can get him back. I wonder if he had an internet issue. Blunty? No. All right. Well, I guess I'll just take over. It kind of feels weird to go on without him. I could try to call him. I don't have a phone number for... I don't know if I actually have a phone number for him. Let me disconnect and reconnect. He's in the chat. Let's see. Join voice call. Calling. No. All right. Well, we're gonna keep going until he comes back. I don't know if I actually have his phone number, or we can't call him. Oh, no. No, we just talk on the internet. That's how we do things these days. All right, continuing on. So it was set to go into auto level and hold throttle position, which is ridiculously dumb, especially for an aircraft that's supposed to be manned. But it gets worse because it turns out that the control link they were using. Anybody want to take a guess? What control link would you put on a gigantic, potentially manned aircraft? Anybody want to take a guess? Crossfire, Ghost. It was apparently using FreeSky R9. It was set to 10 milliwatts, and they figured out why it fail-safed. It fail-safed because the team came from Australia, where they used 915 megahertz. The test was done in Europe, where they use 868 megahertz. Blunty says his internet went down completely. I guess it's back, though. Oh, he says he can't get back on. Hang on. Okay, Blunty's going to call in from his phone. You can Discord. You can call in Discord. Yeah. Do a voice. He's on his cell. Hold on. Hang on 1 second, guys. We'll get Blunty back. So it was set to 915 megahertz. Like the, there you go. Blunty, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Chat, can you hear him?
Hopefully we don't have any feedback. I'm worried about feedback.
I don't hear any feedback, but so you're going to be voice only. So Blunty, I was just telling them that they fail-safed because they were using FreeSky R9 on the wrong frequency. So we are up through the fail-safe and the angle mode. Do you want to pick up from there?
Yeah. So basically, we had a failsafe in the angle mode, and we were on 10 milliwatt, 915 megahertz FreeSky R9. So it's like,
okay.
To be honest, I think it's some of the worst thing that could happen. But basically, we went from that to the fact that, okay, well, there was a backup kill switch. So they built in a kill switch so that a remote observer had to manually enter into a terminal a command to do the kill switch. It wasn't automatic.
So it's not it's not just like you flick a switch on the controller and you kill it. You have a backup kill switch, and you have to literally type a command.
Yeah, I had to manually type a command in. So he did that, and it did not work. It basically was not connected to the kill switch, and what they found out was the kill switch was not consistently communicating. So the kill switch didn't know that it had lost connection. And the kill switch was not set such that if it didn't see a connection, it would basically go open. It was actually set to normally close. So what happened is it lost connection, and it just maintained the switch. It didn't hit the kill switch.
Yeah, if you think about it, guys, how would you want to design a kill switch? You want to design it like a dead man switch, where if anything stops being okay, the switch fail safes and opens up. But they had it set as a normally closed switch, which means an explicit action was needed to open and fail-safe the switch, which meant that when they lost link and they couldn't get through, it just kept flying. And how far did it fly, Blunty?
So they estimate, they weren't sure because some of the signals, some of the sensors were a little off at that altitude. They weren't expected to go that high. But basically what happened is it continued to send throttle signal until the battery ran out. So he flew about 4.5 minutes into the sky, yawing at about, I think about 90 degrees a second or something like that, maybe 40 degrees a second, straight up in the air, and got to about 8,000 feet, they estimate. Then the battery ran out, and he fell back down to the ground, upside down. Luckily, he was okay. There was only damage to the vehicle.
Wait, hang on. Was there a person in it?
There was a person in this, yes.
Oh, are you kidding? Oh my God. Oh,
Yeah.
no, I missed that. I literally missed that until this very minute.
This is manned.
This was a man. I thought it was like an unmanned demonstration. There was a person in it. There was a person in it this whole time? Are you for real?
It's insane. It's really insane.
Are you for real?
Yeah. So
Why? What? The person didn't have like the ability to take control,
no,
like
there was
as
no
a last ditch.
Yeah, there was no onboard control at all, from what I found. The only control was remote, because they were relying on this kill switch system, which was on 400 megahertz. But
What would the
obviously
kill switch have done? Dropped it out of the sky?
Pretty much is what it sounds like. Yeah.
Did it have a parachute?
I don't believe so. No. This is it's a real mess. I mean, again, this is basically a list of things you should not do.
Let's start with why do you even have a person in there? Just put a freaking dummy in there. There's no benefit to having a person on the aircraft if there's not freaking able to do. What is he doing? It's just like, we're going to risk your life for no reason. Who volunteers?
Yeah, they were trying to. So this was for investors. One of the things they note is this was for investors, and part of the thing they're worried about is this was a show off for investors or the crowd that was there. And so maybe that was part of the reason that this happened like it did. But they had done a lot of manned flights previously, but they were done on 915 megahertz on 1 watt in Australia, where that is legal. And that they had previously tested the system like that. But you know, they noted that none of the safety protocols were really safety protocols. You know, the reason that the failsafe worked like it did was just operational. You know, the throttle cut, it went to level, and then the quad sat level until they were able to get signal again.
How does it not have GPS loiter?
Yeah, that's the other thing. So there's no GPS, there's no loiter, there's no return to home. I assume because for some reason they felt like that was overcomplicating things or something. But again, like, you have a person in there. So yeah, it's just this is just
Adam Bostwick in the chat says they had done multiple tests successfully while being manned. They by sheer luck, they had successfully done tests. Like, I got to tell you, I am not. You're gonna get in an aircraft with no, like, there's no parachute, there's nothing. Like, if it fail safes, I just die. And also, it's FreeSky R9 is the control link, and also, my freaking DJI camera drone costs $1,000, and it has GPS loiter. You're gonna just dump me out of the sky if you fail safe? Put a GPS on it. What are you thinking?
Yeah,
wow.
It's really insane. Not only that, but, you know, just to add to all that, you know, the flight plan that they had done was poor. They were going too fast on average, so if the quad had fail-safed properly, it would have hit people. You know, there's just a lot of mistakes here. They even, like, you know, the drone went up into controlled airspace for the local airport that they were testing nearby. So they had to close traffic to the airport at Gatwick. It's just a real...
Hang on. We have to correct something. Dominic Clifton says that the report says persons on board, crew, none, passengers, none. Are you sure there was...
My understanding was there was somebody on there, but maybe not.
Maybe not. Still, it's still a big F up. It's like a colossal F up if there was a person on board, but it's a big F up because you've got a 95 kilogram aircraft flying out of control into controlled airspace, and it's through sheer incompetence. So let's talk about what these guys did wrong, because they made the same mistakes that we make when we build a drone. Well, hopefully we don't make them. The issue is not the 10 milliwatts. I saw in the chat that 900 megahertz system on 10 milliwatts can go pretty far. But the issue, obviously, you want it on 1 watt. Why would you not have it on 1 watt? You know, well, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so they were in the UK. So their EU regulations, they were supposed to set to 25 milliwatt, but they didn't change the radio to 868. So because the radio wasn't an 868 mode, there wasn't actually a 25 milliwatt option. There was only a 10 or a 100, so they picked the 10.
Gotcha. But not choosing the right frequency band was the key. It will still bind in the wrong frequency. It'll just interfere with the cell phone system and have terrible range. And then I don't know how they, you know, their fail-safe system didn't work. Being set to, how do you not have GPS loiter on a craft that big? Like, I understand you don't want to just dump it, but also, how do you just hold throttle position and auto level and pray? No, That's dumb. That's dumb.
Right. Yeah, it's just a lot of mistakes. So like you talked about, some of the big things are like, yeah, if you set failsafe, we know that you're supposed to set no pulses, like that sort of thing. So you never send any more throttle data, and you don't hold the last throttle data. You have a failsafe condition on the flight controller. So,
Yeah.
you know, like if I don't get throttle data for X amount of time, I'm not just going to send the last thing over and over again because my quad's going to fly away, just like this one did. It's instead going to failsafe in some way. And so you have GPS set up, so you have a GPS return to home, or at least a loiter, so you can
Yeah.
find a way to get back to that craft.
Thank you. Yeah, MK in the chat says, put a freaking DJI NASA on it from 2010, and it'll do GPS loiter. Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
clearly they're using hobby components to build this thing. Put a freaking GPS on it and let it loiter. Let it return to home. Like, and then who knows what went wrong with the kill switch, but the kill switch needs to be normally open,
Well, the
not
kill-
normally closed.
Well, the kill switch was a breadboard build, basically, with like a Arduino Uno, maybe it looks like, something like that, and then like a breadboard. It wasn't even properly soldered. If you look through the report, you know, there's a lot of really janky stuff going on. They had a like a power connector that was wired upside down. They had resistors that were barely stuck on the board. There were wires that were frayed because of like heat damage. Just really insane.
Yeah. David Pride sums it up. The AAIB found that the Alauda Airspeeder Mark II was not designed, built, or tested to any recognizable standards, and that its design and build quality were of a poor standard. Dominic Clifton found us some photos. Let's take a look at those real quick. Oh, sure. Put some freaking cookies on my machine. Go for it. We got some photos. Here's the aircraft. A demo in front of VIPs. Like, I don't want to see a manned quadcopter, period. I mean, I'm not getting in anything less than an octo. Like, you know what I mean? Jesus.
Sure.
Jesus. It's a beautiful craft, I will say.
Yeah, it was definitely unmanned. I do apologize about that.
Okay. Well, my reaction is what it would have been if it had been manned. Thank God it was unmanned. We don't want to put out misinformation. It doesn't reduce. It's only slightly less of a clusterfuck, but
Yeah, it
still
almost hit
bit of a
people, but
clusterfuck.
at least it didn't hurt anybody that was in it. So
Yeah. Oh man. Anyway, the big question that I think people are asking is, how did this get approval from the relevant UK agency? Where did the freaking oh, there we go. How did it get approval from the relevant UK agency?
I'm not sure that there's that much. Like basically, I think they just say like, "Hey, here's what you have to do. Here's a list of things that you're required to do for safety. Sign off that you're doing them."
Yeah.
And I think the issue was that they had signed off they were doing them and were not. You know.
Yeah, kind of like the freaking Boeing 737. And obviously, that's a big issue that we're not really experts on. But one of the things that I think I read went wrong with the 737 was that they were essentially allowed to police themselves and say, yeah, we're taking care of these things, when in reality they didn't.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Free Sky R9, baby. There it is.
It's just a set of air. It's just really unfortunate, you know, that nobody on this crew, nobody that was in charge of this, nobody could understand the list of issues that were here. You know, I don't understand how this team was put together or how they ended up doing this project, but it's clear they had no real RC experience, you know, to speak of, that I would say. I mean, I think anybody who's done RC for any amount of time understands what a failsafe is.
Yeah, I mean, you never. I don't know, and I mean, I don't want to. Somewhere out there, one of the guys who worked on this is watching this, and who knows what their actual situation is. I think obviously it was a huge F up, clearly, right? The most charitable thing you could say is that these guys were electronics enthusiasts or whatever, and were not RC enthusiasts, and so they just made rookie mistakes. Any other interpretation, if you go, well, no, actually, I've been an RC enthusiast for 40 years and I've built 700 quadcopters. Okay, well, now you just have no excuse, right?
Right.
So, anyway, there we go. read more about that. There's a link to the full report if you want all the gory details. Not too gory because there was no one on board, thank God. But all the things that went wrong. One of the great things about the aviation community is the way that the aviation community does post-mortem on crashes and mistakes, and a culture of safety. And I think we as the RC community could do well to emulate that, so we can study this and say, where did this go wrong and what should we do? What should we have done instead? And make sure we're not making these same stupid freaking mistakes with our little toy quadcopters. So there, we're going to end on a positive note. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys for being here. Blunty, thank you for sort of being here. Sorry, your internet went down. There we go. There's
Sorry
Blunty.
about the internet, but
We need a picture of Blunty.
Yeah.
To put to the side. But we will see you guys next week. Sam Carmel, thanks for a $5 super chat. Show these guys how to do it with the Bardwell copter. Yeah, I don't know. It's easy to criticize from here, especially when as many mistakes were made as were made. It's especially easy to criticize.
For sure.
Let's see. How about where's the freaking? I've left the live stream chat because I was trying to get Blunty on the phone. Yeah. All right, guys. That's going to do it. We'll see you back here at 6 p.m. on Tuesday evening for the FPV news. 1 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern for my Q&A live streams. And Blunty, you're going to be streaming. Are you streaming tomorrow? You usually stream on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, I should be streaming tomorrow at 3 p.m. MST, as long as I guess my internet works out. But that hasn't been an issue before, so.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Blunty. And we will see you next week. Happy flying, everybody.
Later, guys.
All right. Boom.